And I fight with the strength that I got until I die. So I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on.
Welcome to our Alderwoman Maria Hadden. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be here again.
It's great to have you. These are some very big weeks you've been having here in Chicago, leading up to today, which today's is the Ward Cleanup Day, Saturday, April 24th. So we've recorded this earlier. Maria is out there with you with her broom and passing out shovels, but we're talking to you today because, well, for one thing, the historic case that just got decided, maybe you like to share the thoughts that you had and put in that good piece that I read with our audience.
Sure. It has been a really heavy, I think, couple of weeks for all of us here in Chicago and around the country. So this week in particular, and the verdict of the Chauvin trial. I've seen so many reactions from people that I resonated with, right? Of definitely some sense of relief. I can say I know I was. Everyone I spoke to, especially the day of and leading up to, I think we all expected not guilty verdicts. I didn't expect things to work and was kind of back and forth and then so there was some relief in hearing those three guilty counts. And then that relief for me was also immediately replaced by a lot of skepticism and cynicism and still feeling like a huge lack of satisfaction, right? It was the relief and at the same time was not satisfying. So I know in the statement that I put out from kind of my aldermanic page was really around how what struck me a lot were the arguments of the defense team in the Chauvin case, right. and how their argument was, George Floyd died of all of these underlying conditions, or he died because of, his drug use, or died because of, his poor health. And that's why he died, right? And it wasn't because of, this police officer's knee on his neck. And at a very basic level, I'm glad that the jury agreed that no, he was killed by Derek Chauvin, who deprived him of oxygen for 9 minutes plus. And that's why he died. But it really resonated with me because this is an argument that I feel is used
all the time
against Black Americans all the time, in some shape or form. It's, well, you're in this situation because of this, right? Like systemic oppression is that knee on our neck. And we're whether it's dying at higher rates of COVID because of all of the underlying health conditions. And that's, that's not just national, it's right here in Chicago, right? We're still seeing numbers of Black Chicagoans still having much harder times with recovering, right? Or surviving COVID-19 because of underlying health conditions that are all the result of complicated layers of just, decades and decades of systemic oppression. And that was what was striking to me. And so leaving this moment with the renewed sense again, another moment of there's so much work left to do, and trying to get to here in Chicago, what can people do, right? What can we tap into? And so don't know if you guys have talked about this yet already this morning, but we do have a big civilian oversight unity ordinance on the table. I've been working with colleagues and community groups on warrant reform with the Anjanette Young ordinance. We have real opportunities to make changes here.
Yeah. We didn't talk about that. It's one of the questions we have coming up about the People's Ordinance and a couple other things. But can I start with, you continue to have one of the most informative and packed weekly newsletters that I've ever seen from an elected official. Seriously, really useful news. And the good news this week was that you have managed to put together with the partnering with Heartland Health and the CMSA, put together a second vaccination event here in our neighborhood.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's so good. Thank you so much for doing that. And I'm going to volunteer at it along with some of my other.
When is it?
So it's going to be on Friday, April 30th. So Friday, April 30th from 9 to 5. So pre-registration's required. We'll have information. We've got a wait list of people who've been calling my office. So we're already reaching out to folks on that wait list to make sure they get signed up. Yeah. And we're also making sure we're targeting some of our neighbors who don't have access. So we're working with groups like A Just Harvest. We're working with, folks who are delivering food service, right, to people. We're working with partners like Centro Romero and St. Jerome's and Madonna Mission to look at some of our poorest neighbors without access to healthcare, and also how that intersects with some of our immigrant and refugee neighbors. But this is an event that's going to be open. We will share this with 49th Ward residents. And so if it's not, I know we're recording for the future. If you don't see the link right away, we will have something to share probably early in the week as we've been working to get people signed up. And I also want to mention, because between the last time we spoke, Katie and Michael, the Illinois Restaurant Association also has an event targeting restaurant workers that's actually going to be on Monday. So Monday, April 26th. So again, we're working with our state representative, Kelly Cassidy, in her office. We're working with the Rogers Park Business Alliance as well like flyers are going out to restaurants, like we're taking flyers out to restaurants and hospitality places in our ward to make sure we get people signed up, because it is a smaller event and it is just for restaurant and hospitality workers. You don't have to work at a business here in the ward though. And so if you're listening to this, and there'll be some social posts about it, I think the state rep posted looking for a few volunteers, but that's going to be another opportunity. So if you're a hospitality or restaurant worker, April 26th, that Monday, from 9 to 5, there will be another event.
So that's not you and me, Michael, anymore. We don't get to go to that.
I had all my shots. I'm just telling others to get them.
Yeah. So folks, I'll say if folks haven't seen info about these by the time they're listening to the show, they can reach out to my office. So 773-338-5796 or email us at office@49thward.org.
Right. And remember to do the org, not the com.
Yes.
Yeah. Recently, you had the Progressive Caucus had its yearly gathering, and I'm wondering, given that you came in with a crop of really good progressive alder folks that came in a couple of years ago to City Council with an activist bent we've rarely seen. How many members are in the Progressive Caucus, and what are its top priorities right now?
Sure. So we have a fantastically strong Progressive Caucus. We're 18 members strong. And we cover the whole city, right? From the 10th Ward with Alderman Sue Garza up to the 49th. We're out to the 35th Ward, right? With Alderman Carlos Ramirez Rosa. We've got good coverage all over the city. I'll say one of our top priorities that members who've been members who were the lead sponsors on either GAPA or CPAC, right? So Carlos Ramirez Rosa, Rod Sawyer, even though he's not in the Progressive Caucus, Harry Osterman as well, but our chair, Sophia King of the 4th Ward, right, helped to make sure we prioritize as the caucus the unity ordinance, right? So empowering communities for public safety, looking at this combined GAPA CPAC effort. This was a huge priority of the Progressive Caucus, and we're fully committed to seeing this through and making sure we've got passage. So that's a huge one. Another big piece is really, we've been working on what our budget process will be for this year, wanting to really get ahead of the budget, knowing that how things played out last year, how we, are already seeing kind of the mayor hedging with the American Reinvestment Act funds, talking about how, she wants to use half of that for debt so that we don't have as much debt. I think there's a lot of discussion and a lot of work that we're committing to do from the Progressive Caucus side to make sure that we're, focusing on housing, treatment, not trauma, right? Making sure that we get alternative crisis response, right? So that people don't have to call the police. Alderman Rosanna Rodriguez Sanchez, right, has been leading on that, and the caucus is behind her. Another big issue. And then, of course, we do have an environmental agenda as well. So myself, we introduced an order and are working with the administration to see what it would look like to bring back a Department of Environment. Alderman Daniel Espada and Alderman Matt Martin are also leading on some environmental issues. So we've got a pretty full docket with the group of us covering, I think, some of the most important issues that are facing Chicagoans.
Maria, Katie has been bringing up on a regular basis during our show the Chicago Monuments Project. And I know you had a meeting earlier this week with the Rogers Park Westridge Historical Society, and I wonder if you could give us a brief report.
Would love to. So the Rogers Park Westridge Historical Society is wonderful. So we had a great meeting, fantastic turnout. I think over 150 people who attended the meeting on Monday.
We announced it a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I'll say we had some interesting Zoom technical glitches during that meeting. So you can find the recording. It will be on our website, and I'm pretty sure the Rogers Park Westridge Historical Society is going to share that as well. But we do have a monument in the 49th Ward in Rogers Park, the Indian Boundary Lines plaque, that was put on the list of monuments for the citywide review process. And we had some fantastic speakers. So we had 3 very learned speakers, some from right here from our community, who gave us a great overview of like where this plaque even came from. So I learned a lot about the different tribes that lived in this area, about the really faulty processes around treaties, right? Treaties that took land from our American Indian people who lived here. But also, we started the discussion about what this plaque signifies and what's missing. And it was a fantastic discussion around the history that gets hidden, the history that should be revealed. And in the scope of this larger monuments project, I think the beginnings of this notion of how could we, maybe coming up on our kind of 200-year anniversary of the city, how could we re-envision these monuments and use them to reveal a lot of the hidden history and make sure that people know what's happening. So it was beginning of a discussion. People can definitely catch the video of the presentation. And I know we'll be working with the Historical Society to continue that conversation.
We're going to run out of your time, it looks like, and we have like 3 more questions. So we're going to have to ask you back to ask these. You've
got, we can go 5 minutes over.
Okay. In the very independent-minded 49th Ward, we're accustomed to challenging relations with the city mayors, exception being Harold Washington. How are things going for you and Mayor Lightfoot?
I think that it hasn't changed much. We don't have a very deep relationship, and I'll say these first few months of the year, we haven't had much opportunity to talk. So hoping to change that around a couple key issues. So I have been working with her team a lot on something that I'm pretty excited about, and that's Juneteenth. So her team, we've been working on what that celebration is going to look like this year. And I think that's a really positive thing that we'll get to do, that the mayor's definitely a part of, right? Of what that looks like, how we're celebrating and marking it. Some things that we've got to work on, and this will be, you know, some interesting opportunities, is really the Anjanette Young ordinance that I mentioned, which I'm going to do a plug. We have a virtual town hall coming up, a citywide virtual town hall that's going to be on Tuesday, May 4th from 6 to 7 p.m. for folks to learn more about that. And so definitely we'll have the registration info. Look for that in the newsletter from this week. So, you know, we introduced this slate of reform. So myself, 4 other Black women progressive caucus aldermen. And, you know, a week later, the mayor and the superintendent introduced some policy revisions, and both are trying to get at some of the same things, but we've got some conversations to have. So, you know, have been talking to the public safety chair, Chris Taliaferro. I think we're going to have some good conversations with that. And so I think that'll be an area of opportunity to work with the mayor on. So we'll see.
We also have a question about development and gentrification anxiety. Do you have time?
Yeah.
Okay. There were a few big projects here in the offing in the ward, one on Morris Avenue, the big one on Howard. How has the process shown you so far how to engage with the community in these questions? And do you get heavy or big heavy pushback from developers? I assume you get heavy pushback.
You know, I'll say, I feel like our community process and the engagement has gone really positively. So one, people are engaged. People are interested. They've got opinions, strong ones, because this is Rogers Park, right? But people are showing up, and that's kind of like number one check for me. People are showing up and they care, especially as we look at the community development process around the Howard Ashland site, right? Where we've had a space that a lot of people care about, right? From the Peterson Garden to the potential that it holds for Howard Street, for jobs, for economic opportunity, for community space. So a lot of really deep involvement from folks. And I'll say, not a lot of pushback from developers. I think they still are kind of waiting to see. We don't have a ton of development projects here. And in some of our smaller ones, it's been, I guess, not enough of them to develop a consistent, to make a consistent judgment on kind of where we are. But I do think that the thing that I care about is that our community has been very responsive and receptive to the way that we're making development decisions.
That's great. Do you have one last question, Michael, or should we let her fly out the window?
You know, you put one in here about the Golden Fleece Awards from that great former senator up there in Wisconsin, William Proxmire. And he used to give an award, what's the most outrageous waste of taxpayer dollars? And we're going to ask you that in city government, what's the most outrageous expense and what should we be spending on more?
Did you ever hear that, the Golden Fleece?
No, I'm
Check
not
it out. He
familiar.
was great.
That's because you're young.
That's because there we go. You know what? I probably don't have a very fun answer to this, but I'm going to bring it to another clear next step. We spend over 40% of our budget on policing, and for all the different opinions people have about what police should do, shouldn't do, I think arguably from a fiscal perspective, we need to be spending more money on our social services. This pandemic has shown the huge gaps that we have in our public health spending and systems. We need more money for public health. And we can't continue to rely on our nonprofit sector, right? Our nonprofit sector and our fantastic organizations, but the city's really been counting on them to pick up all the slack, to deal with every mental health crisis, behavioral health crisis. Look at how our vaccine rollout's going and how dependent we are on private health systems, right? And we need more investment publicly. We're in the middle of a trying to figure out how to not have our city's ombudsman program, right? The folks who advocate for residents in our nursing homes right now. The state hasn't received more money for that program in years. The state funds the city for it. The city can't afford to hire the requisite number of people based on the money that the state gives us, right? Because of their good union jobs. And this is the city of Chicago, and it costs more to live here. So the state wants to privatize that program and bid it out to nonprofit or private entities, right? That's the exact wrong direction right now. We need those ombudsmen. We need good public workers, right, who are accountable to residents for these crucial jobs. And so just as an example, what we could be spending money on, right, to expand the things that improve the quality of life, I think there are services. I think that's kind of the biggest thing on my mind right now.
Maria, one last thing in lieu of our sports report. Tell us how your weight training is going, because
it's going so great. It's going great.
You are formidable. I'm an old guy now. I'm afraid to match up against you.
Well, I definitely have some progress to be made, but I'll say leg day is Tuesday and the squats are looking really good. My bench press could use some work on arm day on Mondays, but it's coming along pretty well. So I'm ready for our summer athletic season. I'm ready.
Right on.
Alderwoman Maria Hadden of the 49th Ward, we are so grateful that you made time for us today. And when you come back, people who are listening, after Sly and the Family Stones stand, we will close out the show. So stay right where you are. You're listening to Live from the Heartland at home during the pandemic. And again, we thank Maria Hadden for being here.
Thank you both.
In the end, you'll still be you, one that's done all the things you set out to do. Stand, there's a cross for you to bear, things to go through if you're going anywhere. Stand for the things you know are right. It's the truth that the truth makes them so alive. Stand, all the things you want are real.